Where we left off last time is we had some platforms over here that basically just go in and out. They lose their physics bodies. And we're going to kind of do something a little bit similar with the barrels over here. And obviously, we're kind of making a Donkey Kong-like game. If I were to hit the animate button here in Xcode's scene editor, you would see that the barrels are, of course, respecting the physics bodies of the platforms over here. But I'm sure you all remember that the old original Donkey Kong game did not release barrels like this. They were, of course, timed in. But what we're going to do is make it so that we can have them kind of randomly come out. Obviously, right now, they're not random. They're just all dropping at once. So we'll go random and also make it so that they are timed in. What we need to do, though, is set up a barrel class. And I'm going to unfold custom code. In the last video, we made this very simple class called platform. It's a subclass of SKSprite node, and you can see there's not a lot going on here, just setting it up and switching the physics on and off. And that's a lot of what we're going to be doing with these barrels, okay? So even though we've already set them up in our scene file, let me switch back over here and just show you that they do have a physics body just initially, almost sort of for demo purposes, but they're set to dynamic, which means they're included in the physics simulation, they allow rotation, and they're affected by gravity. So we're going to do the same thing code-wise. Let's go ahead and duplicate this, and there's something to watch out for. I'll show you in just a moment. Well, one thing to watch out for is you want to be sure that you target both the game and the game TV. So this is the iOS version and your TV version. Make sure both of those are clicked on, click save, and here's kind of an odd thing. All right, see how it looks like the barrel is selected over here? But the platform class is actually the one I'm editing in. So just click anywhere else out of there and go back over here to the barrel. Okay, so it is a duplicate, so we do need to change this. Obviously, Xcode is detecting that there are two classes in there called barrel. And in terms of our setup, what we can do is leave in this function over here. Of course, we'd probably want to put in here this barrel is set up. And let's get rid of this. We can actually leave the switch physics function in here, but let's call it switch physics on, and we're going to do another one down here that's called switch physics off. So I'm not typing at the very bottom of the screen. Let me move up here just a little bit. I'm going to leave this code in here for right now because we're probably going to steal a bit of it. But one of the important things that we need to do is actually make it so that our barrels are basically getting registered and set up. Right now, there's nothing that's calling set up on these barrels. So what we need to do is go over here to, I believe I called it set up children. Set up children. Okay, and again, some of you might be coming into part 3 of this. So we've already got this code in here that basically looks for all the platforms. Yeah, so it's enumerating through all the children in the scene. And I'm just going to take this same bit of code, copy it out over here, change this to some barrel. I forgot to actually check if barrel has 2 L's or not. I hope it doesn't. Some barrel. It looks right like that. Who knows? Maybe it's only got 1 R. And then, of course, what we want to do is put over here some barrel dot setup. So we're calling the same function in both our platform and our barrel classes. So as long as we have our barrels in the scene with a custom class set to barrel, this is going to work. It's going to call that function. But the thing that we should double check over here, which some of you might not have done yet, if you're following right along with me, is putting in the custom class of barrel. And you can see that this is maybe something I shouldn't do, but I have the name set to barrel, which is a little confusing. And this could just as easily be barrel 1, barrel 2. The names don't really matter. But the custom class really does. All right, so each one of these has a custom class set to barrel. And again, these are all subclasses of SKSprite node. So they basically have all the same magical powers as an SKSprite node, but we are extending them. All right, so that should be good to go. And now we can really begin kind of plugging in the code to our barrel. One thing I want to do is if the barrels ever fall below the 0 point on the y-axis, and that sounds geeky, but all it is just if they go below here, all right, this would be 0 on the y-axis. Remember, here's our y-axis, 0. If they go below there, I want to send them back over here to where they initially came from, which is just off screen anyway. So what we're going to do is store a variable for that, and that's going to be var initial position. This is going to be a CG point variable. This is going to be CG point 0. I did look ahead a little bit to Swift 3, and the new code is going to be .0 like that. How fun will that be? Being sarcastic. And then I'm going to go ahead, since I'm declaring some variables for this class, going to put in the random drop variable. It's going to be a Boolean, so it's either going to be true or false. And initially, we'll make this just be false, and then we can just kind of tinker around with setting that to true. Okay, so for our initial position, look how easy this is. What we want to do is, as soon as we call setup, all right, then we're going to say that our initial position is going to equal self dot position. Okay, right? Makes sense. And then what we're going to do is actually switch the physics off at this point, because remember what we just saw in the simulation was that they're all going to start dropping right away. So we actually want to take the physics away from them at that point. And that's really simple. We just need to go over here and just put in self dot physics body is now going to equal nil. So they did have a physics body and now they don't. Then what we're going to do is put everything else inside of this if statement. So we're going to say if random drop is going to equal to true. We got to do our two equal signs over there. Opening and closing bracket. So everything that we write inside of here is going to be hinging upon whether or not this is true or false. And just for right now, actually, let's maybe skip past this. And what we'll do is do the timed version of this, which is going to involve basically timing it in our main game scene. But we got a little bit of work to do here with our switch physics on. So if self.physicsBody equals nil, what we want to do is no longer make that a rectangle, because remember we copied that from our platform class where it did make sense for that to be a rectangle. What we want to do is make it a circle of radius, and in parentheses I'm going to write self.texture. That's optional because this may not actually have a texture. We know that these barrels do. And then we're going to get the size, and then the size property has another property of width. And then what you have to do, this is kind of weird, but after the opening and closing parentheses, just put this exclamation mark, so we're forcing a value out of this. Pretty confident it's got a width though. And then we're going to divide that by 2. Why would we divide it by 2? I have no clue. No, I'm just kidding. It's because we're making a circle out of the radius, right? So if it was the diameter, I almost said dynameter. If it's the diameter, well, then we wouldn't do the division, right? Okay, so now what we want to do is do the opposite of what we're doing with our platforms. Remember when we were kind of toggling them, we were setting their properties all to false, because those platforms are just static. They stay in place. They don't drop down. They don't rotate. It would be kind of fun, though, if they rotated, but these are all going to be set to true, and we don't need the else statement. So what we have to figure out now is where we're going to call switch physics on. And again, I revealed to you earlier that's going to be in our main game scene. And kind of the way that I set up this the starter kit is I expect you to put most of your kind of game engine-y type code. I actually did the finger quotes, even though nobody can see me. Your game engine-y type code in the just here in the game scene, because it's actually one of the more empty classes that you got. I know this looks like there's a lot of code in here already, but there's really not that much other than the variables that we kind of declared over here. So after, and this is inside of your did move to view statements, basically your first function that runs and takes care of all the other magic that I included in here, we can start doing things, right? About here. So let's put a little note. Do stuff, if I can spell stuff, for your game. And because I'm horrible without my notes, I need to go and remind myself. The other thing that you're not seeing is I've got a second monitor where I get to basically cheat and remember all this code. All right, so the function that I wrote earlier was start rolling barrels. I think that's still a good function name. It's always a bad idea when I start renaming functions when I record these lessons. All right, so the error that you're getting over here is obviously just that it can't find a function called start rolling barrels. All right, so func start rolling barrels, and what we're going to do is get that function ready to roll, no pun intended, and we're going to make a wait action. So there's going to be wait SKAction equals SKAction dot wait for duration. Hey, you want to see a little Swift 3? Up ahead, it's going to be for duration instead of wait for duration, right? A lot of questionable, I don't know. They're trying to simplify everything. I get it. It makes sense. Okay, so then let, and then there's going to be another type of SKAction, and it's going to be run code, SKAction dot run block. So basically, we're going to run a block of code after we wait, right? Makes sense? So we just got to put these in order. And then inside of this, these opening and closing squiggly brackets, we're going to write self dot make barrel dynamic. Essentially make it part of the physics simulation. And we want to make a sequence out of this, so I'm just going to shorten this to SEQ. SKAction is going to equal SKAction dot sequence, and we're going to put in here wait run code. Okay, and then let. This is going to be, by the way, the reason I'm writing let is because none of these are going to change. As soon as they're set up, they're good to go. So it's a constant type variable. SKAction dot repeat action forever, and the one that we are repeating forever is going to be our sequence. So we are just going to constantly wait, run our code. We're getting an error over here because we haven't actually put that function in there. Let's just go and write it. So we stop hearing that error. Okay, and then finally, it's easy to forget. You actually have to run your action. In Swift 3, it's just run. How cool is that? Run action, and we're going to put in here repeat. Like how I'm peppering in these Swift 3 to come. All right, so make barrel dynamic, and all right. From here, what we're going to do is enumerate through all the children in the scene. So we're going to write self dot enumerate child nodes with name. And here's a little important distinction. We're going to put in here, even though we don't actually have to, inside the double quotes, do your, I can never remember if it's a forward slash or backslash. And nobody tell me, please, nobody put in the comments what that actually is. And then a star. So two of those slashes and a star means it's actually going to look through any other nodes inside the scene. So it's basically going to look through the children. And this would help us if, for example, some of our elements were inside of the camera or parented to the camera. In this case, they're not, but I think it's usually a fine idea to just go ahead and do this anyway. Sure, it could be a little less optimized, but, you know, why not? It's not that much in the scene anyway. Equals node. There's been plenty of times where I didn't do that, and then I ended up regretting it because I was like, oh, I ended up putting those nodes into something else, and now I got to go back and rewrite code. All right, so we're doing a little bit of casting here. We're saying if let some barrel, so we're basically making a variable over here that equals the node. So we're casting this node, or we're trying to cast this node as a barrel. And the cool thing about this is if it fails, nothing happens. If this succeeds, so basically this node is a barrel, well, then inside of here we are going to make reference to some barrel, and what we're going to say is if some barrel dot physics body dot dynamic, okay, and we can actually test whether or not this is true or false. So if, I don't know why I have the, here, well, there's a lesson. This does not equal true. Or I could also just check to see if this equals false. Doesn't really matter either way. It's the same thing. Getting fancy with the exclamation mark. So if that equals false, then what we want to do is switch it to be on again. So we're going to say some barrel dot switch physics on. There we go. So we got that function there that we wrote. And here's an important thing. We want to break out of this, and normally in like a for statement or something like that, if you want to just discontinue running the code at that point, you'd put break. When we're enumerating through our children, we just put in here stop memory equals true, and that's going to break out of it. And the reason we're doing that is because as soon as we found one barrel that is non-dynamic, that's the only one that we want to make dynamic at that point, okay? Because then 3 seconds later, we're going to switch on the next one, right? So After you do that, there's a little bit more code that we want to put in here. It's going to be this right here. Just go ahead and copy what you've already got. And this is going to be in the update statement, so it's actually going to run at the frame rate of the game, which sounds scary fast, but it's okay. Don't worry. Sprite Kid's got this. And we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to test to see if the nodes that we run into are barrels. I suppose here maybe it makes a little bit more sense not to iterate through every, if you knew for sure that those children are in the main part of your scene, their parent is the scene itself, they're not tucked into anybody else, then yeah, don't do that. But I'm just going to leave it in there for now. And all I want to do is write in here some barrel.update. And I don't actually have an update function yet in the barrel code. So let's go back over to here. And what we're going to do is start writing func update. And the cool thing about this is that if the main game scene were to stop updating, for example, if it were to pause, if the scene were paused, then it's going to have this trickle-down effect where it's going to make it so that any of your other nodes are going to stop updating as well. So anything that you have inside of this function would temporarily stop running. So we're going to write self.position.y so you can test the y value of the barrel, and if that ever falls below 0, then what we want to do is say self.position equals our initial position, and at that point we also want to switch our physics off. Okay, now that we've done that, I think we're probably at a point that we could test this. Oh, do I really feel like switching over to my Apple TV to do this? I might have to, but I'll try to run it in the simulator. Do I sound confident it's going to work? As many of you know, I tend to rag on the simulator quite a bit. All right, so now that I'm kind of in a pause mode over here, I'm not actually paused, but I'm looking at the peak live viewers. Wow, we've had 5 viewers. That's well, we reached 76. So and 10-second views, 7 unique views, reactions. Oh, people have reacted kindly to this. Wow, that's pretty cool. This video is being used in one post. Oh well, that's my post. All right, so I think the simulator is fired up over here. Someone needs a light a fire maybe under it. And attaching, blah, 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 blah. I didn't actually pause this video. It's going to be on the other one. Oh, unless I edit it. Jeez, it would take work. All right, so Donk Game. There's no way I'll get sued. And then I need to actually get the show Apple TV remote open over here. Okay, there we go. And all right, so if we see a barrel roll down here in a moment, there goes those things. So they're gone. We're in good shape. I'm not seeing a barrel yet, though. Doggone it. Okay, well, it turns out that this probably was to blame for something or other. Let's go ahead and take a look at the simulator running as it should have been before. I ended up, during the video pause there, moving my barrels just down a little bit just so I could see what was going on with them. And so you'll notice when they go back to their initial position, it's somewhere right along here. It sure does look like things are working, huh? So they are following through these little slots and everything like that. Now what we should do is go back and finish out the option to make them randomly roll, and that doesn't take too much. So we're going to go over here back to our barrel class, and let's switch randomly drop to true. So we're going to say if random drop equals true, we're going to put in here let random num u. So this is going to be an unsigned integer type. This is going to be equal to arc for random. This is what's actually going to give us our random number. And we're going to switch this to being a NS time interval in just a moment. But so here's where we put in like basically the range that we want our random numbers to be at. So it's going to be what this is going to give us is anything from 0 to 9. And I guess what you might want to consider doing is adding one onto that if you didn't want it to ever be 0. But actually, I don't feel like we need to. So it's arc for random, uniform, 10. And again, this is going to be a constant. So we're just going to put in here, let delay to drop. And this is going to be an NS time interval. And this is actually just going to handle the initial delay. So once they kind of get rolling down there, I think it doesn't really matter because then they kind of end up randomly back at the top. I mean, so what we got to do is convert our random unsigned integer to an NS time interval. And at that point, just so we can kind of see that this is really working, I mean, I know it should show up, but obviously that's not always the case. And then delay to drop. It would also help if I spelled that right. There we go. Delay to drop. If you ever want to print out your variable inside of your print statement, then you just put that slash in front of it and put in parentheses. All right, so that will make it so that we can actually see it in the output window. And then we're going to put over here, let's wait. You know what? We've already seen this, so let's go ahead and just paste it on in here. You don't need to watch me write the same wait for duration and run block action again. All right, so we're just going to wait. This time around, we're waiting for a duration defined by our delay to drop. Running our code as usual after that, so switch physics on. And then this time we're just creating a single sequence and we're just running that sequence. So just so we don't have to see the is this running message anymore, because I'm confident now, seeing those barrels roll, that it actually is working. Let's get rid of that. And then what we're going to do is just for right now, let's go ahead and comment out start rolling barrels, because we don't want to initiate any of this stuff if we're going to have them kind of randomly drop on their own. And let's turn it back over here to the simulator and see what happens. Golly, I hope it works this time. Okay, so I'm going to press into the fake remote over here. Be nice if they made a remote that actually looked like the Apple TV remote. All right, so let's see. All right, so it's telling us, all right, so one of them actually did hit that random number of 0, 3 seconds, 5 seconds. Each one of them is obviously telling us a different time, 1 second. And then, there we go. All right, so they end up, in this case, yeah, obviously what we'd want to do is when they become, let's switch back over here. When they get reset, we don't want to switch their physics off. So then, again, just another little case of using our if random drop equals true false, then what we want to do is switch physics off. Okay. So let's watch it one more time. I was like, what is that error about? And by the way, if you're not a cartoonsmart.com subscriber, you're just mooching off this tutorial for the free information. Hey, trust me, it's going to be worth it to get this sweet kit in all its glory. And of course, this is actually the lamest of all of our starter kits. We have ones that are set up to make you side scrollers, pinball games. The Storyteller's Kit 2 can make you almost anything. Seriously, I'm not even joking around about that. It's almost like a property list driven version of just Sprite Kit in itself. And all right, so let's see this barrel drop, and sure enough, it goes back up there to the top. It looks like they do actually kind of maintain some of their velocity, which is kind of cool, really, because yeah, they are. Look at that. See how that guy's like really rolling when he ends up back over there. If you wanted to stop that, what you could do is put in here, let's see, self.physicsbody.velocity. And then you could just zero this out. I think it would just be zero, CG point, CG. CG vector. I don't think there's a CG vector 0. You would just do CG vector make and then put in here 0 and 0. So that should take care of that velocity, but I don't know. It kind of would make it kind of interesting because then the longer you play, the more that those barrels are kind of going nuts on you. And anyway, I did want to point out that we got all this cool property list stuff in there as well. And that's if you're not familiar with a property list, well, you know what? That seems like something for the next video. What we'll do is I'll show you guys how to, or at least one of the videos to come, I'll show you guys how to put in there on a per level basis whether or not we are going to randomly drop these barrels. And obviously in our main game scene, that should be something that we should have in there as well, whether or not random drop is true or false. But anyway, that's good enough for this live broadcast. I can't believe we did this one live. And then for those of you just watching this not live, well, I hope it was good for you all too. And yep, stay tuned. We got more of these videos coming. And don't forget to hit up cartoonsmart.com.